This here is the Totem 180. It's a really excellent video conferencing camera from IPEVO, and I'm going to review it today, and I'm going to shoot the entirety of this video. So if you're seeing a shot of the Totem, you're seeing it through the V4K, and if you're seeing a shot of me, then you're seeing it through the Totem, and I'm going to show you all the features of it today. Recently I sat in a meeting around a long conference table, and there were some people zooming in from home. So it's what you call a hybrid meeting, where you've got some people there in person and some people online. And we had this awkward moment where we had to reposition the laptop to point at whoever was speaking, and it must have been a very disjointed experience for the people at home, just only really seeing one person at a time and not getting that whole view. And this camera, this Totem 180, actually avoids that. So the idea of the Totem 180 is it can go at one end of the meeting room and it can cover that entire space. So for the last few weeks I've been using this as my webcam here at home for Zoom meetings, and I've been using it at school for meetings just like that, around long conference tables with several people there and several people in different locations online. So first of all, just a little bit of a tour of the features. You can see hopefully there's two buttons here on the front. One mutes the microphone, which I'm not going to do, just mutes the microphone. And the other, if you hold it down, will actually go, if you hold it down, the yellow one will cycle between 120 mode, which is what I had there. Well, this is the 180 view. Importantly, you can see there are two cameras here, and they are overlapping and being stitched together to produce one complete, one panoramic view. And because it's got two cameras, two lenses, two sensors, you aren't getting this distorted field of view that you can get with some 180-degree cameras. The 180 is this kind of panoramic view. The 120 view is the normal single webcam sort of field of view. Just smiling up my gorilla there. So it's versatile. And this is all just plug and play. If I press it once, it goes to the AI auto reframing. So now what it's going to do is it's going to try its best to keep me in focus. So now it's going to try and actually track me and keep me in view. And it will try and keep groups of people in view, and when people leave, it will ignore them. Depending on where the camera is positioned in the room, you can pan the cameras up or down with the little switch in the middle there. It should be quite good at actually keeping it in view. And here's the first thing I would say to IPEVO. A nice thing to see would be that it would do this panning and changing between views just a little bit more slowly, a little bit more smoothly. People that have been on the other end of the calls of this have said that it's just a little bit off-putting in terms of how quickly it does that AI auto reframing. It also does seem to be quite good at sort of learning, so it doesn't seem to work initially as well as it does after a few minutes. And I found that in those meeting room settings that it did work okay. There were times when I actually just decided it was good enough to go on normal view, hold it down and go into the 120, the sort of normal webcam setting, and that was okay for those medium-sized groups. And because you've got the two cameras being stitched together and overlapping, you don't have the distortion of people at one side of that view. One thing they were all really impressed with though is these AI noise cancelling microphones. So there's a pair of microphones on this device. It does a really good job of actually making a really crisp sound even when it's on the far side of the room. So let's move it quite far from the computer now. And that is much further away than I'd be comfortable with having a microphone to a speaker. But people, say on the other end of the calls, said that actually you didn't lose a lot of quality. You didn't get that kind of echoey sound by being away at this distance. So let's leave it there for a little. And let's give the AI auto reframe another shot here as well. It's important that you know that this video itself is not sponsored by IPEVO. This is an impartial and unbiased review, but that I have been sponsored in the past by IPEVO, that we are going to work together again on a few things in the coming weeks and months. But this video itself, IPEVO have no say in the content of this video at all, and they don't get to check it before it's released. As far as I can make it, this is my ordinary unbiased review of tech. So let's talk about the cost versus benefit. Well, first, if you check out a few options for conferencing cameras, you will rarely see a conferencing camera for less than £1,000. So I've got, this is the Meetup here from Logitech, which is £999, or the Rally camera, £1,299. I'm sure those are adequate options, but this IPEVO Totem 180 is £330. Well, I've got the price here in dollars, actually $330. There's a meeting room owl which sits in the middle of the table and has one 180-degree lens, which actually is pointed upwards, and therefore it can scan the entire room. But that costs £1,000. It's a 360 camera with a microphone and a speaker, but it's £1,000. And I know that it can be a bit tricky to set up and you might have problems connecting at certain times. So this is an effective meeting room solution for an absolute fraction of the price of some others. And that's what IPEVO are all about in my experience, is giving you value, giving you quality at a low price. One thing to say about that though, is if you want to use the full features, it has this piece of software called iStage, which I'm going to switch to now. So now what you can see it doing here is it's controlled by the computer. So I have these different options. I can just have auto reframing off and it'll just give me the feed straight out to the camera, just as I had. Or I can have portrait mode and it will be looking for me as a person. Or it has a full conferencing mode. And you can see it's looking for individuals in the room. So it's actually found the picture of my daughter over here and it's sort of separating us out. So if I put a picture of somebody in the room, you can see it's now looking for me and me. So now it's actually trying to look for other people in the room and it's going to try and frame them as best it can. So when it spots that there's somebody else, there you are, it spotted me and my wife. And it's given us a single view of each of those. So that's quite cool, right? Get rid of those. Now I'm guessing it's just going to think it's just me. Yeah, there we are. Unless it spots me on the other screens, it can see me as well. So I'm kind of confusing it a little bit here. Or panoramic conferencing, which is quite a nice mode. So now it will give me, across the top, it will give me the whole view, and then down the bottom, it will split us into individuals, or rather, across the bottom, it will give me the whole view of the whole thing, and then across the top is actually splitting us into the individual groups. It's good, right? This is just to represent other people that might be in the boardroom. And this does work really quite well. And now it also has an AI auto reframe document, which it's not really for this 180. It's really, that's AI. It couldn't really figure out what to do with the document and so it crashed. But I don't think we can blame that when I was telling it to look for a document and there was no such thing. And again, it's getting really confused and it's looking for people where there are no people. So it's a bit of an unfair demonstration. It essentially just appears as a virtual camera and then any app at all can access it as the virtual camera. It just pretends to be a camera input basically. It's a really clever implementation for your conference room. Now, to use the iStage feature, you have to remember that you will need a PC that is capable of actually handling that. It's not massively high specs, but actually I did plug this into my laptop and I found that it wasn't able to handle it in the way that my large desktop computer can. The specs they quote are you'll need an i5 with 8 GB of RAM, or it's best that it works with the M1 Max, at least M1 chip Max now. It works really well on my big PC here, but this is an i9 with 16 GB of RAM and a graphics card as well, and it's handling it really well. What I found on my laptop was that it did work, but you were getting few frames per second. So just bear that in mind. There will be an extra cost if you want to use that iStage app, because you will need a computer that can handle it. In its standalone mode, it does a good job of tracking, but with the iStage, you get more control levels of functionality. You can have it in portrait or conferencing, or you can ask it to actually separate out speakers whilst individuals are speaking, and they will come through as individual feeds. Now, lastly, to talk about its impact and its ease. And I think that this is where it really shines, because you've got these two overlapping cameras at a low price. It means that you're not getting this fish-eyed view of the conference room. And you do rarely see where that is actually stitched together. Only when things move across that plane can you really see that. And if I move to one of the corners, you can see that I'm not getting an awful lot of distortion out here. So I did find the auto reframe is a little bit jerky to come in and out, and I would suggest that IPEVO actually slows that down a little bit in a firmware update. That would be really quite useful. And essentially what it puts out is it puts out a 1080p, so a normal HD feed here. So although it is a higher resolution than that, so that when it does its zooming, it can actually still give you a reasonably high resolution image. You can get higher qualities and you can get different resolutions out of it by using the IPEVO apps. Or you can use the iStage and you've got more customization. But I think for most people, you'll probably be interested in this because you want it to be easy to use. And so really it's the plug and play mode that I like best about it. The iStage software itself is quite easy to use though, and it does give you options. Personally, I would have liked to have seen a few more options in that iStage software in terms of how quickly it pans in and out, or maybe how tightly it crops to individual speakers. And when it does that, when it can group things as well. But maybe keeping it simple is actually the best choice for the ordinary end users of this type of camera. So it is easy to use and therefore it will have an impact into most people's meetings. But personally, I always look for more control. And the standout feature of this are really about the 2 microphones and the 2 cameras. So the 2 microphones are excellent for doing a good job of noise cancelling. A bustly sort of workplace is going to benefit from having multiple microphones, one of which could be listening for noise and just taking that out of the feed within the microphone, and the other one could be listening to the speaker. It's very clever. And audio is the one thing that can really ruin a recording or ruin a meeting. People will forgive you looking a little bit distorted, or they'll forgive slightly grainy or low resolution footage, but they won't forgive a meeting that they can't really listen to and just follow naturally. So listen out for audio sound. If you think that's good enough, then I think this is the camera to go for you, for your meeting room. And then lastly, the 2 cameras allow to track the 180-degree view and allow you to switch between 180 and 120, and you get little distortion every single time. This works really well in conjunction with other IPEVO cameras like this. This is the V4K Pro that you've been looking at the shots sometimes from as well. And also they have a 120-degree camera as well, which just has a single camera on it, but still has got the really good quality microphones and works well with the AI auto reframing option as well. But that camera can actually tilt down into a visualizer style view. So you get this kind of hybrid visualizer or document camera, meeting room camera. So it might be that the Totem 120 is the option for you, so have a look at that. I'd love to bring a review of that in the future as well, so watch this space. But the fact that this meeting room camera can just plug and play and it'll go straight into Zoom or Teams or whatever kind of conferencing app that you use, for me, it's a StreamYard to record this in. It's a really elegant solution and it represents great value too. Thanks once again to IPEVO for sending this out for review. Let me know what you think in the comments below.